No. No.
2-year-old Bre'Yeon Wells was a happy, smiling toddler. But hours after being left with his mother's boyfriend, that joy was gone. Bre'Yeon was dead, and police say what happened to him wasn't an accident. It was something far more sinister. The boyfriend eventually confessed, according to police, and the details are beyond chilling. Because police say he admitted to sexually assaulting and strangling this baby. We are going to break down the details of this absolutely horrifying case and the shocking legal questions it raises. And we're going to do it all with a trial attorney who is bringing key insight into how something like this could happen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Obviously, this is a story we wanted to put a spotlight on. It's important to cover, okay? And the reason that we can do that is because of the amazing support that we get from our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. We're talking about America's largest personal injury law firm, a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. They have recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan, they make it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. You can click the link below, or you can scan the QR code on screen. I want to start by warning you that the details of this story are extremely disturbing. It is every parent's worst nightmare. It's the kind of thing that you tell yourself could never, ever happen to you. You have a St. Louis mother, Bre'Yeon Wells, who left her 2-year-old son, Bre'Yeon, with someone that she trusted completely, her own boyfriend, 21-year-old Nico Cotton. She went to work, believing that her happy, loving little boy was safe and sound. In fact, I'll tell you what, just look at this video of Bre'Yeon that his aunt shared on Facebook, okay? This is the vibrant, joyful little boy that his family knew.
Shake it.
That's the memory that his family is now left with. Because what happened next is the stuff of nightmares. On October 27th, Bre'Yeon was rushed to the hospital, unresponsive, and later died. And then came a horrifying revelation from the police. They say this wasn't an accident, that the babysitter, the man that his mother trusted, allegedly confessed to killing this child. But he didn't just harm the child, no. Authorities say he sexually assaulted and strangled this 2-year-old boy. According to a probable cause affidavit, the medical examiner found that Bre'Yeon had a lacerated liver. The cause of death was ruled a homicide from multiple internal and asphyxial injuries. So how does a story that begins with the laugh of this sweet little boy end like this? We've been digging through the court documents. We've been digging through the police reports to try to get just a picture here, a clear chronological picture of what happened, this case. So according to the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, this all started with a call for help. October 27th, it's around 10:40 p.m. Police were called to a house in the Mark Twain neighborhood for a 2-year-old boy who was unresponsive. Officials arrive, they rush this child, who again was identified as Bre'Yeon Wells, to a nearby hospital where he was declared deceased. And now there are a few critical details here that we want to talk about, because police confirmed to local outlet Fox 2 that the 2 adults who were with Bre'Yeon were not his parents. We have learned that this call came from a house where the child didn't even live. According to a probable cause statement, the man watching him, again, was Bre'Yeon Wells' boyfriend, 21-year-old Nico Cotton, and police say Cotton told them he was the, quote, sole caregiver for the child on October 27th and had been there for several days. Now, initially, the child abuse unit took over the investigation, deeming the circumstances suspicious. The adults present, including Cotton, they were questioned and released pending that investigation. But the break in the case came from the medical examiner's report 2 days later. Why? October 29th, the medical examiner's office said that the little boy's body had evidence of strangulation as well as other injuries. The report ruled the death a homicide, finding Bre'Yeon died from, quote, multiple internal and asphyxial injuries, including a lacerated liver, and also showed signs of sexual assault. So with this evidence, the case was then transferred to homicide detectives. And faced with these findings, Nico Cotton turned himself in on October 30th. It was then, according to the probable cause affidavit, that he allegedly confessed, admitting to sexually assaulting and strangling Bre'Yeon. Now, he has since been charged with second-degree murder, forcible sodomy, statutory sodomy, abuse of a child resulting in death, and it is in that probable cause affidavit where the alleged confession becomes even more disturbing and even more graphic and even more specific. The document states that after being read his rights, the defendant, Nico Cotton, and that progression's important, right? Allegedly saying this after being read his rights, that is when he didn't just admit to the assault, he detailed it. And this is so beyond disgusting and graphic that we're not going to read you the whole thing in its entirety. But essentially, police claim that Cotton engaged in sexual activity with this child, this 2-year-old child. And during that activity, he, quote, bit and strangled the child. The child's death was the result of the multiple injuries he suffered during the sexual assault. It is a level of alleged brutality that is almost impossible to comprehend, especially when you remember, again, that vibrant little boy at the center of it. So following Bre'Yeon's tragic passing, his aunt shared these videos to show the world who this little boy was.
Why do you look like a grown man? No. Hey, shake it.
Again, that laugh, those clapping hands, this is the child that his family is now forced to mourn. In her grief, Bre'Yeon's mother, Bre'Yeon Wells, told KMOV that this feels like something out of the TV shows that she watches, saying, I watch Law and Order all day, so to feel like this is me and this is my baby, the happiest baby in the world, he doesn't deserve this. It feels like my heart is shattered. It doesn't feel like I have air in my lungs right now. She also shared a message for other families, a warning born from her own tragedy, saying, support your family, be there for them, because you could be like me and have nothing. She also told the outlet that one of the only comforts she has is that Bre'Yeon is in a better place with his father. The boy's godmother, Latoya Johnston, told the St. Louis Dispatch that Wells didn't have much support. That's why she left him with someone she trusted while she worked long shifts. Johnston told the paper, quote, she was not a bad mom. She was a trying mom. There's no book on parenting. There's no foundation of knowing how to take care of a child. She was trying, and she had the love and support of people trying to help her learn. Now, Nico Cotton remains in custody, again facing these charges of second-degree murder, forcible sodomy, statutory sodomy, abuse of a child resulting in death. I think it's important once again to remember to say what these charges are, and now we want to talk about it. I want to bring in right now trial attorney Allie Young. Allie, thank you so much for taking the time. It's always good to see you. This is an awful case on so many different levels. And, you know, when you think about these accusations, when you think about these charges, it almost seems unbelievable. It's hard to grasp it. It's hard to wrap your mind around someone allegedly doing this to someone else. But if you start with this alleged confession, right? You have a defendant allegedly confessing to this, providing details about this. Is that just handing the prosecution a conviction on a silver platter? And you also have to wonder, why would someone confess to this? I mean, for this case, thank goodness. You know, if he really did this, you get a conviction easily. In a terrible situation, probably the cleanest resolution you can have. But isn't it interesting that he would allegedly confess to this and why he would do it?
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope that this will help put a nail in the coffin of a conviction here on all counts. But at the same time, you have to wonder, why just walk in and give a Mirandized statement and say, yeah, you did exactly what they are alleging you did to this young boy? It's heinous. It's hard to understand. And it just hurts people's hearts that read the probable cause statement, the charging document, that read any news articles regarding it. So it definitely leaves you wondering why he would just make a full confession to it.
Do defense attorneys say, hey, even if the police say that he confessed, we can try to show coercion, his mental state? I mentioned the progression, right? If he allegedly confesses after being read his Miranda rights, do they try to say, hey, the Miranda rights weren't read properly, he didn't hear them, he didn't understand them? I mean, what are avenues that we could potentially expect from a defense attorney?
Sure. We'd look towards whether or not the Miranda warnings were given appropriately, first off. So then you would hope that the police gave them at the appropriate time. They weren't asking guilt-seeking questions prior to giving Miranda. But then afterwards, we would look to see what kind of what the interview looks like. I mean, is the interview open-ended and letting the defendant or potential defendant kind of just give his story? Are they force-feeding him these answers? You'd look to see if it's a false confession. I mean, we hear about that on Dateline all the time, things like that about a false confession being given because of a low IQ, a low understanding or cognitive ability to really speak on behalf of oneself. And so if a police officer or detective is sitting in an interview being very forceful with someone with low cognitive abilities and insisting that they did something over and over and over again for a lengthy period of time, we might look to see if that confession was coerced or not voluntary, as we would say.
But even if you put the confession to the side, the evidence seems overwhelming. Aside from where the call was placed, right? The call, that in and of itself, this young boy, this baby essentially was, where he was. The medical evidence, overwhelming. Strangulation, lacerated liver, signs of sexual assault. When we talk about this in a child victim as opposed to an adult victim, there are less alternative reasonable explanations for why this would, unless they're saying the medical evidence is completely wrong, right? We're going to bring in our own medical examiner, our own pathologist to say this, these conditions didn't exist. How does a defense attorney fight against this? It seems pretty overwhelming, no?
No, there's no denying that this child was abused severely. I mean, there's not a medical expert in the state of Missouri that's going to come in and deny that this child was abused. What the defense attorney would look to do if they're going to try and fight these charges is whether or not the defendant had sole custody of the child during the entire course of when the abuse could have occurred. So I know in the probable cause statement, it does say that he says he had sole custody of the child for a number of days, but we would look to see if that's an accurate statement or not. We would look to see if there was anyone else that could possibly do this. The defendant taking the child to the hospital would help in the defendant's favor, showing, okay, maybe he didn't actually do that if he has the wherewithal or the compassion to take the child to the hospital seeking help for what's going on with him.
And what do you make of the fact that, just going back to something I mentioned, I mean, this didn't happen in the child's home. There were other adults present. They weren't his parents. How does that play into the prosecution's narrative and theory of the case and what we should be thinking about that?
The prosecution on all counts has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant, Mr. Cotton, is the only one that did this, and that nobody else helped or could have been responsible for the crime that was committed. And so his confession certainly helps, but any defense attorney is going to try and poke holes into that story immediately.
And you wonder about other people who are present, cooperating witnesses, maybe a defendant of some kind. It's hard to grasp it. Okay, let me ask you about the charges here. So Cotton's charged with second degree murder, not first degree murder. Can you break down the difference there?
Sure. So first degree murder, there's got to be some deliberation. It's a mens rea issue. It's the mens rea of, did he knowingly or was he certainly aware that the conduct that he was doing was going to cause the victim to die? That's a first degree murder case. That is a hard case to prove it in a case like this where there's not a whole lot of evidence outside of the sexual assault. I think the strangulation could get you there if you were really wanting to go for the first degree murder and possibly the death penalty. The the way to get there would be to show that, hey, the conduct that the defendant was doing was almost certain to cause the death of the victim. And we know that because he strangled the victim, or at least that's what he admits to doing. And the asphyxiation injuries would point to that. But then second-degree murder is a easier case for the prosecutor to make, because he just has to show that for the purpose of causing serious physical injury, the victim died because of the defendant's actions.
And you charge abuse of a child resulting in death. That's like, at the very least, you can convict him on that, right? Sometimes you see these in prosecutions. It may be a lesser charge, an important charge, a felony nonetheless, but it's almost as if a jury were not to find him guilty of murder or sodomy, which we'll talk about in a second, you throw that charge in as at the very least, right?
Sure. And a common, I would say, abuse or neglect of a child in this situation is not necessarily a lesser charge, because based off the statute in Missouri, murder in the second degree is a range of punishment of anywhere from 10 to 30 years, which is a 30-year sentence is a life imprisonment, right?
Right.
Abuse or neglect of a child is the same, a 10 to 30-year sentence. However, under the statute, if a child dies as a result of the defendant's conduct, the defendant is not eligible for probation and parole until they've served not less than 15 years of that sentence. So they have to have at least a 15-year sentence on that Class A felony of abuse and neglect of a child. On murder too, there's no minimum as far as the 10 to 30 range.
I appreciate you making that distinction. It's important. Talk to me about forcible sodomy and statutory sodomy. Aside from the human perspective of it's hard to grasp my head around that when you're talking about a young child and how disgusting that is, legally speaking, why charge two different counts of sodomy here?
Sure. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of just throwing the kitchen sink at them. They're the same exact charge outside of just one different element of each side. So on sodomy in the first degree, it's an unclassified felony, but it's charged as an aggravated offense. So under that count, they'd have to prove forcible compulsion. In order to do that, they just have to show that physical force was used to overcome a reasonable resistance. So it would be reasonable for anyone to imagine that a victim, a child, anyone else in that position would have used some sort of resistance to the defendant's conduct. So you get there pretty easily. But under a subsection, if a prosecutor can prove aggravated sexual offense, it's a minimum term of imprisonment of 10 years. The other caveat to that is it has to be run consecutive to any other counts that are in the indictment. So it would have to be run consecutive to the amount of time that he gets in count 1, count 2, and count 4. And then similarly, in the statutory sodomy count, the prosecutor just has to show, obviously, the age of the child. And under this subsection, because he's under the age of 12, it's a life term or not to be less than 10 years. And so under those two unclassified felonies, they both have to be run consecutive to one another. So on count 3, he can do no less than 10 on that one. It has to be run consecutive to the no less than 15 on the count 2, has to be run consecutive to the 10 to 30 on count 1, and then has to be run consecutive to whatever no less than 10 on count 4. So the amount of time that he's looking at just by these 4 counts based off of the way the statute reads in Missouri, it's a large amount of time just based off the minimum.
Yeah, and if he did this, good. That's exactly what he deserves. Now, he was, our understanding is he was initially questioned and released, then turned himself in later on. Is that an interesting timeline to use? Does that raise questions about how investigators maybe handle suspicious deaths before they have official confirmation there was foul play here?
It's not unusual, especially in cases like this with a significant amount of medical evidence that is going to have to be gathered and turned over to the prosecutor. There's going to be a SANE exam done, which is a sexual assault examination. Maybe they recover DNA from the sexual assault examination. And then just from the injuries that a medical examiner would observe from the child, there has to be a determination of a homicide prior to issuing an arrest warrant. You
know, one of the tragic aspects of this, Allie, and you cover a lot of these cases, is this mother was put in a very tough position. And there's been, I mentioned before, when you have a lack of resources, maybe a lack of support, you're a mother who has to work. Who do you trust your child with? This is a horrible, horrible case. It is a tragedy. Our hearts go out to this mother, to this family. I don't even know what the lesson is here. I don't even know what could have been done differently. When I saw this case, it's like, how could you imagine something like this would happen? And I don't know what the takeaway is.
I mean, Jesse, the last time you and I spoke, it was about a daycare worker killing a child in a daycare here in Missouri. And now we're talking about a family friend. Some reports say it's her boyfriend killing her own child in the most heinous of ways. The only lesson as a mother that I take away is protect my own child. I'm the only person that I can trust to protect my own child. It's hard, it's devastating, and it's something that no mother should ever have to go through, no family should ever have to go through. And I can't imagine the grief and the overwhelming guilt that she's going to be feeling for the rest of her life. She knows that she left her child with somebody that did heinous things to her child, and she will no longer have her child.
And I think about this, if this goes to trial, she would have to testify. And what a compelling witness she would be for the prosecution. What would the defense do? The defense would say, You trusted Mr. Cotton, right? I mean, you felt confident enough to leave your baby in his hands, right? I mean, I don't know what that would even look like. And aside from the pain and the trauma of her having to testify in a trial like this, but I imagine that's what it would look like.
Unless you could use her to establish that there were other people that had care and possession of the child, then this may be a witness that the defense attorney stands up and says, I have no questions for this witness.
Yeah, it's probably a good move. We'll see if this even goes to trial. Allie Young, horrible case, but thank you so much for breaking it down for us and understanding what Mr. Cotton could be facing. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.